Welcome. This is called Love and Friendship.
Love and friendship.
Yes, I have an
all right.
extremely loving friend.
That's right.
Oh, and you're going to watch. All we're going to do is hug each other for an hour. I'm sure this is going to be riveting television.
Very edifying.
Yes, this is Pamela Geib. I'm your host, Michael Koran. And we're going to be talking about a therapy system, really. Is that what we call it?
Yeah, a model we can call
A
it.
therapy model, which I've been doing for 13 years, and you can see how well it's worked for me. And Pamela,
He's perfect now.
Pamela is a therapist.
I am.
We once did a television show many years ago called Multi-Personalities and what they can do for you and you and you and you. We don't know what we'll call this yet.
Right.
But we're going to look at internal family systems, which attempts to describe what's going on inside us,
That's right.
including our spiritual nature.
Yes.
It's not just
To some extent. That's
yes,
right.
not
Absolutely.
just the psychological. So we're lucky to have Pamela, who works with multi-personalities. That's what attracted me to her. And I don't know which me was attracted, however.
That's a good question.
But she's now going to give us some of the basic, the essential tools or concepts in internal family systems, and then we'll talk about them.
Okay, well, first of all, we have to give attribution to Richard Schwartz, who kind of created this model out of a lot of different strands and themes in psychotherapy over the years. But he was the one who coined the term internal family systems, and he was the first, or not the first, but he was one of the people to talk about our personality being multiple. And it's kind of important to make a distinction because people over years, and probably sometimes still now, think of multiple personalities as Sybil, as somebody who, gets up one morning as Michael and then comes to the party as Jim or Josephine.
Wow,
And
sounds exciting.
That's actually something that is called, at the far end of that spectrum, dissociative identity disorder.
Much like multiple personality. I'd much rather be a multiple personality.
Yeah, you'd like
than
the
dissociative, what is it?
dissociative identity disorder. So
Dissociative.
DID is what it's called
Did.
in the trade.
Wow, you
But
suffer.
that's not what we're talking about.
Do you suffer from did? If you do, you can
Call this
visit
number.
Pamela Geib.
So we're not talking about that. We're just talking about the natural multiplicity that we all have. And so that would mean like everybody would hear parts language. And some novels, you see it more than others. I was really struck when I reread Anna Karenina that there were so many parts of the main characters. But you would know this if you're viewing this tape. You would think like a part of me wants to go to the movie right now, and a part of me wants to watch the tape.
Thank you for that part.
And
Thank you.
Michael loves that. I love that. Maybe another part wants to take a nap. Now,
Whoops, yes, gee.
that's an ordinary situation.
Challenging.
But in therapy, sometimes people will experience themselves as monoliths. So somebody could come to a therapist, and maybe you have, or maybe I have, and say, I'm anxious, or I'm really depressed.
Yeah, I can identify with all of these.
Yeah, and that sense of being a monolith. And of course, nobody who is anxious or depressed or any other state is that state wholly. Like, are you ever, tired instead of anxious? Or are you ever happy when you see the sunshine?
Yes.
So we are made up of various parts.
Now, but why call them parts? Because most people wouldn't say, they would say part of me.
Part of me. And that's a very common phrase. So let's just
Yeah,
breathe that in. Oh, part of me.
Yes, well, we're going to let Pamela, we're meaning me, the royal me with all my heart. We're going to let Pamela continue before we investigate this.
So Dr. Schwartz sort of set this up in a way of understanding people. So that we're born and we are spontaneous and lively and hungry and touch things and explore, and we live in wonder, and then life happens. to us. And Dick Schwartz would say we become burdened by experiences, hurts, beliefs about ourselves, beliefs about the world. And when that happens, we can't just be in that raw, vulnerable state.
Well, happy
Hurt.
vulnerable state, yes.
But that's given. That comes with
Yes.
with the merchandise. It's a happy, vulnerable state. But then when we get burdened or hurt, constrained, as well as getting those burdens, we get protectors to help us.
And the burden would be, what would be an example if I,
Well,
theoretically, my mother did say that the happiest time of her life was when she was pregnant with me.
the happiest time. Well, that's a really good thing to hear.
Yes, a little sad for the rest of her life,
Right,
but
the rest of her life. But let's say that, do you think your mom might have ever yelled at you when you were a little kid?
that was her basic, her default
Okay.
way of communication.
So she might have even said critical things
Uh,
to you
she
in
might
a
have
young way?
Maybe once, never. Yes, or probably very many. Yes.
Okay.
She was
So
good at that.
let's say that hurt a vulnerable, open part of you. And it got burdened, it got sad.
So if a part of me wants to love, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wants to coochie coochie coo, and I get slapped.
Yeah.
So what happens? So
happens.
we're saying that coochie coochie coo part.
It gets protected. It gets burdened,
Yeah,
and
they
hurt,
had
but then it gets protected.
They had a video of Dr. Watson
Oh, really?
when we were born. I think you're not.
Well, I'm about the same age.
Yes. So Dr. Watson was the reigning child psychologist.
Right.
This is before Dr. Spock. And Dr. Watson said, don't hold the child.
Right.
Only feed it at the end of 4
Intervals,
hours.
Right.
And so, and Dr. Watson proudly showed, on film, proudly, he could take a little girl of about 2
Yeah.
who saw a pussycat, and loved it, of course,
Yeah.
nice pussy.
Yeah.
And then he rang, after she saw the pussycat, and she was happy, he rang an extremely unpleasant
Harsh.
sound.
This is terrible.
And the girl didn't like the sound, and he was proudly showed, after a few experiences like this, she could see the pussycat and be in terror.
That's a very terrible thing.
And that's what you're saying.
Yeah,
right?
I'm saying she both got wounded by the bad sound, but then her protectors came in, and actually one protective move is freeze, and so it was like what you were describing just then, just non-verbally, was kind of a freeze response. So our protectors can be in fight or flight, they can be in freeze, and they can just be protectors that we know about in ordinary life, which is like we may know somebody who's like very closed mouth, doesn't say much about their vulnerability, so they're kind of avoidant of connection or contact. Well, that avoidance is a protector.
Also. So the burden, the poor little girl, instead of being happy when she sees a kitty cat, is that
that's a kind of freeze response, which is a protector of
and that is a burden she's carrying with her primal enjoyment
of life, right?
Of cats. So then whenever she sees the cat, the burden comes to her.
Right, and the protector tries to help her,
And
not do anything.
freezing.
Because, right.
So what is actually the burden?
So the burden might be if you interview that little girl inside her. Let's say she's grown up and she's 37 right now.
Yes.
And you're in therapy with her and you find that little girl and she says that the world is really scary.
Yeah.
The protector says, I have to freeze her because she needs that.
Because those sounds are going to tell her.
Yeah, and then
her.
if we got the protector to stand back and we talk to the little girl, she'd say it's scary.
And that scariness is the burden.
The scariness is the burden.
For that.
Yeah, thank you for helping me, tease that out.
Yeah,
It's
so
really
the
helpful.
scary, and then if we really get good at working through that, how do we work through that burden?
Well, let's just say there are 2 kinds of protectors. There's managers who sort of run our lives, and somebody can have managers that are extreme. So it's good to have managers like to pay your bills, but if the managers get over anxious or critical, like you're not doing enough or you're not doing it right, then they're kind of extreme protectors, and we need to help them.
So let's focus on this little girl again.
Okay, so she's
freezing is managing, right?
Right. That's helping her manage.
Manage.
But what
so
if she were to grow up to be a very particular perfectionist kind of person? Have a manager who's trying to get everything right.
And not have any animals in the house.
Right, not have anything like that ever happen again.
Yeah.
So that manager would be a protector of hers. But there are also protectors that Dr. Schwartz calls firefighters. And they are not so careful as the managers. They are really trying to fight or flee. So fleeing usually is an avoidance, and it takes the form of all kinds of addictions, any addiction you could name.
So she's avoiding kitty cats again?
Avoiding
or any kind
inner
of
pain.
any kind of affection and interaction.
Yeah, and the pain
Might
that
frighten
comes.
her.
You know, and you can also
So she
medicate pain.
might not want to touch people.
She might not. But
Because it might be too painful.
in other times. it
And
might
that
just
would be considered a fire.
a firefighter, that avoidance.
Don't touch me.
Right. That's not a manager, that's a firefighter.
That's a
Right.
firefighter. And the manager might just be in situations where.
It's just kind of ultra managing things. And,
Oh.
and that actually evokes self-criticism.
Because
criticism
why
of
aren't I
others,
more open to the kitty cats?
or why aren't I
Or
doing
affection.
more paperwork?
Or affection,
you know,
yes.
Why haven't I earned enough degrees? Or
Oh,
you
so
know,
I
managers
saw all
really
of that.
kind
So
of-
that the initial burden, and the burden was being scared,
yeah.
that desire to just touch. And so
Yeah.
touching became something, got burdened with fear. Right?
Yeah, burdened with fear.
Touching got burdened with fear. And then,
She had a freeze response.
yes, and then in order to not have that unpleasant feeling, she might go into a nunnery.
Oh, well, that's
Yeah.
that, with most of the people we know, they aren't in nunneries.
Say,
But that can
tell
happen.
me, oh, yeah, but she might be really careful about
She might
touching
really
people.
avoid everything. Yeah,
Yes.
that would be very extreme.
So not be
Right.
pain when even someone hugging her could be painful.
It could be. So you're talking about what could be a really, really extreme effect of something.
Yes,
like
my own
that.
experience actually.
Uh,
But it's easy to talk about, like our president talking about his own experiences and projecting it on everybody else. Okay, so I understand the initial burden, protecting, and then the two kind of protectors, the managers who said,
Mhm.
okay, really be careful if you're in a
Right,
situation
yeah,
where
really
someone's
careful.
going to hug you and you don't want it. And the firefighter might be, I think I'm going to read and be a reader and discuss things from my mind.
I'm going to
Because-
avoid, right?
Because touching is,
Right.
touching
Touching and
people's-
feeling are out.
out
Right.
is-
Yeah.
they're
So-
really beneath me.
So you could be reading, which is an avoidant.
So we have them all. Then. We have burden, two kinds of managers, fighters,
You
and
got the
then
protectors.
two kinds of protectors.
Yep.
Oh, thank you. Man-
Anytime, Michael.
Managers
That's
and
what I'm
firefighters. And then we left out the juiciest
We
part.
left out, how do we get back to the garden? How
Yes,
do we ever
yes.
get back to a feeling state of joy and engagement with the world? How do we ever do that with all these protectors?
And we can. We're witness. You're looking at
Finished work.
works in progress, but we're
Works in progress.
yes, but we've learned some of these.
So,
It only took us, 50 years or so. We cannot rush the healing process.
no, you can't rush it. But so we're still talking about the IFS model
Yes.
of Dr. Schwartz, and so he posited that there was something that he called self and self energy. That I think the characteristic of it that I like is compassion, and that is a place inside everyone where they can be compassionate towards the protection and the suffering of their own aspects or parts.
Wow.
So
how in this particular example
Mhm.
of the little girl and the kitty cat, when she gets in touch with herself,
mhm,
her compassion
Let's say
itself.
she's an adult now, right?
Yes.
Yes, and she's maybe in therapy.
Yes, or a therapist, who knows?
Could
And
be. That happens.
yes, and she gets in touch with her what does that feel like, her compassionate self?
So I would just speak really from my own experience of what that is in me, and then you can speak about your experience, because I don't think this is a very easy thing to talk about abstractly. So I think my experience, I often talk to clients about their heart opening to themselves or to their parts. And so that my experience is that a kind of a feeling of expansion and loving kindness. And that feels like an energy that kind of rolls forward. And that is healing. If it's inner to you, to yourself, or outer to somebody else. But this model says, with help, you can heal yourself with your own self-energy.
Yes, it's very good. It doesn't require you to go to a therapist, actually.
If you
can learn it.
It's
It wants
easier.
you to be your own.
Right.
Well, I feel like crying now that you describe it.
Mm.
So you could even put your hand on your heart.
Yeah.
And discover, if you're this little girl, oh my, I don't have to run away from this affectionate
Right.
interaction.
You might have to do
I've never experienced it before, but I have some feelings I've been hiding from or protecting myself
Yeah.
from. You know, with my heart or my intellectual in the head. Who would have known? Wow, I have a heart like the Tin Woodman.
Isn't he the one that thought he didn't have a heart?
Yes, and the lion. What did the lion?
The lion thought he lacked courage, but he was really courageous. And so we have these internal resources. That's a really great, kind of look into Oz, because they all had those internal resources that that internal family system says we all have.
And they didn't know.
They didn't know.
So that would be great to even tell some. And so once we discover compassion,
Right.
now internal family system says this isn't just another part
Right.
of us.
That's right.
We might say, in regular human language,
Right.
that a part of me really feels compassionate for myself or for you. So, but
But the model wouldn't say that.
the model we're gonna stick with the model for this half hour.
Okay.
We have 10 more minutes, and then the next half hour,
We
stay
can go
tuned.
beyond.
We're going to explore how true this model is,
Okay.
or the ways,
Where it fits and where it doesn't.
or the ways to even have it grow beyond where it is
Sure.
now. Because Dick Schwartz is actually a very growing thinker.
Right. Good. That sounds
So-
good to me.
So the little girl feels she might cry when she discovers, oh my, I've been hiding from touching people for so long,
Yeah.
and it's so nice. Wow, doesn't have to be.
Oh,
Now, how does she
that's
move
so-
from the pain, that big bell
Right.
that she hears whenever anyone touches her? Ah! How does she go from there to saying, hey, maybe it would be nice if it was just for maybe a moment if we touched? How does she get there?
Well, I do think it does help to have a therapist help you unfold this inside yourself. And the first thing is that there are lots of theories and actually almost common sense thoughts that some of our protectors are bad. Like what if I have an avoidant part that keeps me from people? I might have a critic that thinks that avoidant part is bad.
Yes, little girl, I'm totally in my head. I am a statistics teacher, and I've learned to hate statistics, but at least it's safe.
But you might have an internal critic saying, "Why are you so avoidant? Why do you ever go out? Somebody just asked you to a party, but you said no. You said you had too much work to do.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?"
Yes, so
Other people go out.
there's a real dramatic
So-
struggle. There's your
Yeah.
protector and
There's-
your critic.
Well, they're both called protectors. So the critic is a manager,
Yeah.
and the protector, the avoidant one, is a firefighter. And they often
Now,
beat up
what
on
is
each
the
other.
difference between a manager and a firefighter?
A manager tries to get things right and done. And
So the manager of this little girl wants to get her statistics.
right, she should work harder.
Work harder.
Right, and then the critic actually might say, why is the critics can be critics of managers or firefighters.
They're very
Basically,
flexible, yeah.
most people walk around feeling like at least part of who they are is wrong. Wouldn't you say that?
I've written poems. One of them is called Nobody's Perfect. Stranger to the human race, I'm always losing face.
Oh,
I'm baser than the base, a disgrace to be erased.
oh, that's perfect, Michael. That's how we all feel inside at some moment to some extent, right? I'm no good, or this part of me is no good. And so when we start the healing process, we appreciate all of our protectors rather than putting them down.
Right, because our little girl was a statistician,
Mm-hmm.
and she was able to be top in her field, and
Right.
all her students loved her, and so it did a lot of good for her.
And we will find that always that all of our protectors have done a lot of good for us because they've got us through. And that isn't so easy.
No,
To
we're
get through
walking
your
miracles.
own childhood.
Well, how do you handle
Right.
it if you have this esteemed psychologist banging on shrill, traumatic sounding bells anytime you saw a kitty cat? Wow,
But
that's hard.
not only that, but many of us had childhoods that were not ideal. I hate to tell you.
No, no. This is still children can still be watching this. This is only
You don't think we should say this out on television?
yes. This is Boston after all.
So given that we're even going to say it again, that not everyone and many of us didn't have an ideal childhood, then we're going to have wounds and we're going to have protectors and we're probably going to have self-criticism. So it's really a new move to open up appreciation for the protectors that got us through. Whether they made us, super nerdy, or they gave us a bottle to drink, here's some alcohol, just go away from that
Yes.
pain. Whatever they did for us, they
Become an
did.
intellectual.
They become an intellectual,
Yes.
study world religions.
Become a president.
Right. Oh no, don't go there. But they did get us through, and appreciating our protectors is an amazing moment in therapy, in my experience. Is that they just have felt so alone and so
Because they've been
maligned,
so criticized.
so criticized, right.
Well, some part of us might have been proud. I'm a statistician.
Right.
I'm really good at numbers, and so
Well,
some part. And
and
you might not even hear the critic.
But
Wow.
managers tend to get more accolades than firefighters, but they still get criticized because they're extreme.
And the manager is a critic, right?
Yes, so a critic will
Try to
criticize the
manage
manager.
it, get you to work harder.
Yeah.
We're not working harder enough.
And so to really appreciate the positive intention of our protectors starts a healing process. It just starts unfolding.
Because in some ways our psyche did these things
Our psyche
in
produces
order
on
to-
purpose and for a good
in
reason.
order to, almost like an
Right,
immune system,
Right, that's right.
to help us get
Oh, that's a
by.
really good, I love you saying that.
Good going,
Immune
psyche.
system.
Good
Yeah,
going.
good going.
Yes,
Thank you
even
so
if I've
much.
never touched anybody. Good going. It's never too late to reach out your hand. Look,
That's
see,
right.
look, we can do this. Yes, touching is good.
So as protectors start to feel like they're not alone, they're being met, let's say by the therapist's self-energy, and then a little bit later on by the client's own appreciation, they start to relax and they kind of start loosening their hold on our systems. They start feeling it, maybe it's a little safer than I thought.
I'm not all bad.
I'm not all bad. I'm not even bad.
I'm
They're
not
appreciating
even
me.
bad.
They're appreciating me.
I've done a good job. I'm here. It hasn't been easy.
It hasn't been easy, and this is for even extreme parts, like eating disordered parts.
At least they fed us.
Right.
At least without that eating disorder, I might have starved to death.
or I did try to starve to death, but, you know, it was all for the cause of not feeling the pain. So
this therapy can make you start feeling pain.
yes.
Yeah. We saved this to the last, to the first part of it. Yeah, you thought we might have been getting into it. Right. We're sorry to let you know. So all that trauma of hearing that bell sound.
Yeah.
And all that did to you, to distort you, to boot.
Right. So people really go towards that very carefully and slowly, because we don't want to just open a box and have it pop out.
Quick fix.
Right.
Can't just fix it.
Quick fix.
Watch this show and you'll live happily ever after.
That would be nice to say, wouldn't it?
No.
But it would be a lie.
And lying.
Sorry. Lying is wrong.
And that is a critic.
Yeah.
Lying is wrong. No.
We have to say the truth. It does take a while for all that compassion, for that appreciation, for that you are not bad, to get all the way down to those original traumas.
So I'd love to, but you're going to stay tuned. We have 1 minute to go.
Oh, we do.
But we're going to be back for another half hour to just begin to discover how, when we discover compassion, just simply maybe holding our heart.
Yeah, and appreciating who we are on all levels.
Now, compassion means just I feel your pain, right?
Well, that's what it means literally, right?
I feel with you.
Yeah, I feel with you.
Compassion.
So I'm with you, right. So, you know, and I would say it sort of in my own way, which would be my heart is opening to you.
Oh, that's much more beautiful.
Yeah, but that's just how I experience it in my own.
My heart is opening, and for those of us who discover we have a heart, my heart is opening to you, and the you could be me.
Yes,
to start it.
And you could be saying that to your own self, or to your own managers.
Wow.
Your own
and so we discover new power.
Right.
Welcome to AHA. That's the name of the show, which means a human among humans.
Okay.
And we have a delicious human with us here, Pamela Geib, Dr. Pamela Geib, who works with people with multi-personalities. And I'm your host, Michael Koran, and we're talking about IFS, Internal Family Systems. And we were laying out the basics, which we maybe can summarize in at most 2 minutes now.
Okay.
The 5 essentials.
You want to do it?
I'll try, and you can help me.
All right.
There's exiles, a little girl who sees a kitty cat and then hears loud screaming noises again and again by a psychologist who's teaching how he can do these things. And so she sees the cat and is in trauma. And that pain is so much hard, she pushes it away.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't want to be touched by people because that brings up that pain.
Okay.
So that's exiles. And now she has to protect herself. This is painful, right?
Right.
So she has a manager that says, okay, don't go to these dances where everybody's bumping into each other, right? Be careful, men could hurt you, or anybody actually. So I want to just be very standoffish. I might consider going into the nunnery. So that's a manager, right? Now a firefighter might be if she is, that trauma is beginning to come up, and because somebody falls in love with her, she's a lovely person, and he wants to go out with her, and she doesn't want to do that, and she starts either binging, so she's so fat that no one will like her. That's a firefighter, right?
That is, right.
So no one's going to want to touch me. I'm one big bundle of lard.
Well, it's also a way to not have your own feelings,
Also.
Yeah, right.
So we've gotten exiles, painful, managers, managing the situation, they're both protecting you. There's 2 protectors, managers and firefighters.
That's right. Yeah.
And so that's the 3 basics, and there's just the self, is that the last?
Yeah, and exiles are called exiles because they are exiled from our experience by
I don't want to feel that pain, yeah.
Yeah, right, okay, yeah.
So we've just discovered, just very simply, exiles and 2 forms of protectors. And we've discussed in the first show, we can begin to have compassion for all these protectors, because they stopped us from feeling this unbearable pain.
Right, we're talking about appreciating our protectors
Yes.
and that they're
You've
generally
done a good
criticized.
job. I wake up in the nunnery. I might, after a while, leave after 10 years, but thank you for keeping me away from that. And then there's a way to begin to deal with the managers, the firefighters, and the exiles.
Mhm.
And we started talking about it, putting our hand on our heart and discovering, oh my, I didn't know I was keeping away from my feelings so long.
Mhm. It's starting to.
I, like the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz, I have a heart. Wow. And I can feel love and appreciation for what these managers and firefighters have done. And maybe begin to have compassion for that traumatized little girl, yes?
Right, as is going slowly into that system. And then, what this model says is that we become primary caretakers of ourselves, and then others, including therapists, can be secondary caretakers.
That's so respectful.
But it's wonderful because it takes tremendous, terrible burdens off romantic relationships, which are very burdened by, desperate hopes of
Someone
rescue.
rescuing you.
Absolutely, and finally, I've got this one person who's going to rescue me and make it all up to me, which of course is a burden that no partnership can really bear.
No.
So if we
Even
become,
though some men have fantasies, I will save you.
Right,
Or women to see a
Right.
handsome man who's very
Oh.
troubled. My love will.
happens all the time with all.
And you
kinds
mentioned another word that we mentioned in the first part, burden.
Right.
And the burden is, learning from you, you said it so clearly, a burden is if I'm a little girl and my desire to play with a kitty cat is so traumatized, that desire for touch and affection, even innocent touch and affection, is burdened with all this trauma. And I might think touching is whatever I think, but all those feelings burdening this nice impulse to touch, right?
Which is something we're just born with. It's part of
Right.
our birthright.
And when we begin to have compassion for these exiles too, once the protectors stand.
Once the protectors trust us enough and have felt like we really understand them, and we understand they have a positive intention, and we respect their mission, and it's really something to ask a protector, what is your mission here in this system? And they will tell you, either sooner or later. They will
Yes.
actually tell you.
I'm here to stop my little girl from being traumatized
Right.
by touch.
The way she was. And they're always right, because they're always referencing some past truth, even though it doesn't show up as a present truth. So it looks off. It looks
Right, but
extreme.
it's what's happening even at the moment. She's not able to,
She's re-experiencing it, yeah.
and she's not able to really form a touching, affectionate relationship with him. So we really have made clear in just 40 minutes internal family system. Except we've left out one part, we've hinted at it. That compassion we feel when we hold our hand on our heart, one way to feel it. That is called, in internal family systems, the self. Is that right?
The self, or referred to as self-energy. So,
Self-energy.
so you might say, if you're talking to a client, so can you focus that heart energy? I don't usually use self because it's so an abstract word,
Yeah,
even though it is the word of the model.
yeah.
But if I might say, so can you focus that heart energy on that protector? Can it feel that?
That's beautiful.
Is it able to receive that yet?
Does people cry in your office often?
Well, sometimes, yeah.
That's
It's
very, very
moving.
touchy, yeah, very
Yeah.
moving. And you might cry too, I don't know if you're allowed to as the therapist.
Well, if you do, you do, because if you're moved by
It's
something.
very beautiful, and there's sadness to it. Well, I've spent all this time protecting myself, and now how easy it is, who would have known?
Just to let that energy in.
So if we start feeling love, loving compassion for the wounded little girl in us, how does that help her unburden and get back again that affectionate?
Well, first of all, she starts receiving some of that, either easily, like, wow, where were you before, or with great difficulty. But if you're patient and you keep holding that energy with a client or with yourself, then she will get to an experience of, like, I am not alone. Like, I've been alone all these
Yes,
years.
very lonely.
I am not alone.
Yes.
And there is this warmth and energy, good, coming towards me. But then there's in the model itself, and I don't find this always needs to happen. Sometimes that energy just releases everything, and it's beautiful.
So all
It's
of a
very
sudden
spontaneous and organic,
and not actually being held by the therapist,
not physically.
right? Although she might, as homework, practice
Yeah.
being held, holding herself.
And often it is happening internally.
My therapist actually told me once to just hug myself, which helped a lot.
Yeah, wasn't that good?
Yes, very helpful.
Yeah.
And then she might get brave and start going in maybe careful, controlled situations.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a hugging class where they would just hug and not nothing
There
more.
are cuddle parties.
Yes, cuddle
Yeah.
parties. And nothing, and they're really very regulated.
I think they are. They're
Not
not
sexual.
erotic at all.
No. So when she could begin to feel that touching is lovely.
Mm-hmm. And so there
So what happens to all those other feelings, the trauma?
Well, that's a great question, because I have found that what we call unburdening can be spontaneous and organic and just happen naturally, but there is a protocol for that, which is once the exile has received that energy and is beginning to feel not alone, you can ask that girl or boy part, whatever, do you feel ready to let go of that stuff?
Oh, so it might just be a verbal.
Yeah, and then there's a ritual. If you're at the point where you say, do you feel ready to let go of that yet? And I always being sure that you're not rushing anything because your manager wants to do it, like.
Yeah, let's get rid of this.
Yeah,
Wait, I want to be
let's
healed
get
now.
rid of this,
Now.
Right, or we have to end soon.
Yes, the therapy sessions. Yes.
Right, or I want to feel really competent or whatever. So you have to be sure that you're really doing it at the pace of the child. But then you say, you feel ready to let go of that stuff, and what if the child says, yeah, and you say, would you like some help in knowing how to do that? And what if the child says, sure, and then you can offer a ritual, kind of a shamanic ritual, which involves, would you like to have that cleansed and dissolved and cleared with light coming through, or water coming through, or wind coming through, or would you like to take it and just bury it really deep in the earth? Or would you like to put it in the fire and just see all the molecules disappear?
Wow.
And so some very thorough cleansing.
And you could, I'm sure you don't do this, but this could actually be done.
It could actually be done,
Yes.
although it's generally done inside
Right, but
the
for those
person
of us who-
inside the room.
Yes.
But there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, yes, a little
Having-
bonfire or a little
ritual.
swimming.
Right, swimming, wow,
Or
yeah, water is
I was in one group where someone was buried under leaves.
Mm-hmm.
Also, and then we could be
What was the intention of them being buried? What was
to
their
feel what,
shamanic intention?
feel what it's like to die, and
Mm.
it would be beautiful,
Mhm.
and you could come up out of the.
So it might not have been releasing a burden, it might have been a different intention.
Yes, yes.
Right, yeah,
We can release things too this way.
Yeah, yeah.
Even swimming, and it's very verbal too.
right. So we're using words and we're using energy, really. So
Oh,
without
well,
the
it could-
energy, it's nothing.
So it's because you're really sharing your loving energy, not just your words.
Yeah,
With so that's very
Yeah.
nice.
yeah.
Is
And
that exhausting to you?
no, if it's just flowing through you and from you,
Wow.
heart energy, it's actually easy. I mean, you do have to focus and pay attention and track where the person is, but that's kind of with your mind. But with your heart, that's just easy energy. If your heart isn't blocked, if you're not trying too hard.
So we can also, these protectors then, that were keeping her away from
Mm-hmm.
finding a partner,
Yeah.
including her overweightness, wait, that's a firefighter. I'm learning.
Yeah, firefighter, right.
Firefighter, binge. No one's going to like me. I don't have to worry about being touched. And you're lonely for the touch, of course, but even that's frightening.
Well, sure.
And what is
then
that?
I think loneliness is just a feeling that humans have when they're too alone. But then often that will be attacked by a critic trying to manage it. A manager trying to manage it.
Don't be so lonely.
Yeah, why don't you just get up and go to the gym, or why, just.
So what is that lonely? But if she's lonely for touch, where is that in the system? Is that just a part of her?
I don't think of sort of what I would call, see again, this is just me, right?
Yeah.
I would call human feelings, and I don't think IFS really addresses this, like grief. What if someone close to you has just died and you are in mourning, you are grief stricken? Is that a part? I would say no. That's an existential experience.
Yes.
What if you're lonely because for some circumstance.
You're not touching people.
Yeah, let's say that one, that circumstance. Is that a part, or is that just a human existential condition?
No, that's you, because you're lonely. I'm lonely
Yeah,
now.
because
It's not just a part of me.
Yeah.
I'm grieving with all my, and I want to grieve with all myself.
That's right. So I think that, exiles get formed from hurt, and protectors then spring up to life with a positive intention to help. But all those parts, I do think they're partially you. They're not all of you. And once you unburden an exile, you have to go back to the protectors and see if we were going to ask the statistician in that girl, who became a very, assiduous worker, to say, did you notice that the little girl let go of all that into the light?
And she might say, okay, I don't need to be a statistician anymore.
Or she might say, I don't need to work so hard.
Yes, I could be an energy healer. I could be an IFS therapist.
It could be a change,
Yeah.
or it could just be a less extreme position. Just like I love being a statistician, but I don't have to work 12 hours a day.
Yes.
I could go out and see my friends. I have dinner. Yeah, that'd be great.
So there's lots of us which I like, the model doesn't necessarily have to address, but they're us. My loneliness,
right.
my happiness, my
Right.
excitement, my
Right.
joy. They're, maybe it's not fair to call parts of me, because I'm just, that's all of me, right? All of me is joyful talking with you.
Well, we were talking about that a little bit before the show. We were saying, I was saying that, when we're born, we just naturally, our birthright is that we're sometimes cranky and hungry and all that
I
stuff.
was all those things.
Yeah, well, we all are, but then we also have this natural birthright of joy and reaching out and engaging with the world and curiosity.
Yes, so that would, and that
Finding
is
out what's all there and being delighted. That's how babies make their living. That's how they survive.
So
They're
we can
cute.
get that back.
We can get that back. That's what is
That's still
underneath the
there.
burdens of the
It's still
exiles.
there in
Because
the
the exiles
closet.
are children.
Or we get our inner child back again.
Yeah, and then we can have more joy or more touching and reaching to others.
So when
More
she
engaging.
is compassionate for the managers, which includes firefighters,
The woman,
I mean the protectors, including the woman, of her protectors, her managers, her firefighters are overeating or careful controlling situations. When she's compassionate loving compassion for all of them, and they're willing to step aside and let that little girl come out again in careful situations to begin
they
with.
they won't let her cross the street in traffic, but she can
So
she can go outside and she can exalt.
and then she can learn and get stronger and stronger.
Right, absolutely.
And I'm sure she'll have a little relapse and go. Now, we still have, fortunately, 10 more minutes to talk about the heart of IFS, I think, which is
the heart.
the self.
Yes.
Yes, well, you're calling it the heart.
Yes, now the model calls it the self. That's
Yes.
absolutely correct.
I love your...
Yeah, I tend to think it's an awkward way to express to other people, like clients, because what does it really mean? Myself, yourself. And
Right.
so that's why, and it feels more true to me to say heart.
Now, but what about, you're a very thoughtful person too, to say the least, both of us. So what about our head too? Can our head and heart be joined?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I tend to, what people say, privilege. I tend to privilege the heart.
Oh,
It's more important in my system to me than is my head, although I like my head and I like my cognition and I like reading and I like talking and all of that. It feels great, but it feels like a way to play. You know, whether I'm reading a novel.
oh,
or
but the
talking
heart
to
is
someone.
more.
The heart is more foundational in
Wow.
my experiencing. But that, I think, what would you say about yourself? Because that's really what's interesting, I think, is how we all experience that.
One of I have the reason I'm attracted to this system. I have Zen masters inside.
Talk about that. That's interesting.
Since I went away to the University of Chicago at about 21.
That's for very, very smart people.
Yes, I had
University of Chicago.
in my thought, my mind, and axe. My father literally was a firefighter.
Right, isn't that funny?
I had an axe. He was a firefighter, and it would chop my head off daily.
Oh, inside.
Inside, I would see
you.
this.
That your internal father chopped your head
Yeah,
off every day.
it's still happening.
Well, Michael, that's a big deal.
And it's a gift I've learned from this system. Oh my, it's telling me I need to get more in my heart. And it works.
It works.
As soon as I get it, put my hand on my heart, sometimes it wants to obliterate me entirely.
Wow.
And then I, like, as you said, shamanically, I can get new eyes.
Mm-hmm.
In shamanic journeys, you can be obliterated, like sleep does that in some way. And you can wake up with a new
lease on life is what they say.
and just a new everything.
I knew everything. Right.
So as those shamanic, so I could feel like my hands. I have a very extreme inner life. They chop off my hands, really at the wrist, so that I can touch people in a more heartful way.
And there is something in this model that I just want to bring up because it makes what you're saying makes me think about it, which is that there are sometimes energies that come into us from other people or from other places that aren't ours. So, you know, I would be just curious if that father inside you chopping off your hand every day is a part of you or is actually some other kind of energy.
Wow, that's a hard question.
It's a hard question.
Because I've been living with it for so long.
Yeah, that would be something.
I mean, we have a Father in us.
Right.
All of us.
But generally we have characteristics or beliefs.
Oh, we don't have them inside? I think.
But the actual energy of your father, if it's inside you,
Yes.
you can send it back.
Oh, good.
Yes. I mean, but it takes a little bit to understand whether it's really just parts of him and parts of you, or is it really his energy?
Well, I think he was not happy that I was conceived.
Yeah.
I asked him if I was planning. He said, no, but we were eventually having, and it was, as you understand, it was when our family went to see the play, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
Yeah.
We all four of us felt, home, home, our family.
That was terrible.
So
there was a lot of high affect in your house.
powerful feelings.
Powerful feelings, yeah.
So I think my father and mother, who was also trapped in this marriage, didn't want me to be.
That's a very profound experience.
That's not unusual for children to feel unwanted.
Unwanted, but...
So when I go into my shamanic journeys and obliterate myself, there's a nice fancy word, and I'm a part of the Sufi community here, fana, which means obliteration, for recreation.
But with an intention.
For recreation, yes.
Recreation, right.
So that's really like, winter and then spring. It's like our nature. So that's how. So I feel my father, in some part of him, talking about parts, didn't want me to be.
So what's that like as you say it just now? As you're saying that, is it feeling like you're just saying it as the phrase because of your?
No, I feel sad.
You feel it in your body, right?
I feel sad in my face. I'm in my whole body now.
So So let's just both send some compassion and love to that place
Oh, wow.
that's sad.
Well, we're doing it.
Yeah.
You didn't think we'd get into
We
an
could do
actual
we could
therapy
actually
session.
do it in the moment.
And I'm getting this for free. This is a high-priced therapist. And you are too. Well, we're not asking yet for contributions.
Well, let's just see if you aren't a TV personality for a minute, which will I think everybody out there is going to allow this for you. And just see if we can send some energy to the sadness and see if it's able to just receive that, just even knowing that it's only got a moment or so before you're back on the air. Just knowing it only has a moment, but would be willing to just take that in. And you don't even have to tell us. You don't have to make a report on it.
Feels great. Feel like crying.
Sadness came forward a little bit.
Happy crying.
Yeah. Well,
Wow.
you're not alone.
Well, and you, should can we give this gift to you too or not?
That sounds great. Why not?
Okay.
Yeah. So I also, as you actually know, Michael, I had certainly a lack of parenting, lack of loving, lack of appreciation of who I was, and I mean, I was actually even afraid to invite my mother to my wedding because I knew she wouldn't come, and I knew if I did invite her, she'd be mad that I didn't understand that she couldn't come, and if I didn't invite her, she'd be mad. So guess what? I invited her, she didn't come, and then she accused me of not having invited her. So it was sort of a, let's call it a lose-lose proposition.
So in our last 2 minutes, can we do anything that's to...
Well, so let's just spend a minute here sending energy to that girl who was, I mean, by then, that time in my life, I was old enough to not be a child, but alive enough to be scared. So just to send to that scared place in her, just to send that healing energy to her. So what I can say on her behalf is that she knows we're here, and that it's heartening for her to know that I got through it, and that she doesn't have to be left back there. That just came up. That was very spontaneous. Yeah.
And by she doesn't have to be left back there, you mean? We have 50
Well,
seconds.
if I connect with her, she's not alone.
She's not alone there?
Yeah.
Oh, she was alone with that?
Yeah, with that dilemma.
Oh, now she has you and I with her?
Yeah.
Wow.
Great. Much better.
Well, what's final in our last 40 seconds? How should we say goodbye?
I don't know. We're just really glad everybody came with us.
Wow.